Good evening, folks. Once again, LakeCAM is helping facilitate this. I appreciate it, both to Sean and Jose. Um, I did have a slide presentation. I may just end up putting it on our website as it relates to what I shared with the members earlier. I'd like to welcome everyone back to the second meeting of the reopening task force. Thank once again everybody for participating in this important endeavor. Now that we have the state roadmap and the initial guidance from DESE, the primary focus on all our schools is returning to in-person instruction. As we proceed tonight in what is going to be a relatively short meeting, I would ask that if anybody wants to put into the chat, they can add to a chat and we'll allow some other conversation as we go. Please know that the district in creating this task force already really has begun the process to secure necessary PPE, is preparing for the planning phase over the next couple of months. And I do know that the initial document probably has raised more questions than answers, but it is a driving force into what the next steps are in the process. And I'd really like to articulate that tonight. I do not want folks discouraged at all based on what the state has shared to date. It is the initial, and again, I underline the initial school reopening guidance. And really the next step in the process and the real work is going to take place, not necessarily with the task force here in communication, but with some feasibility studies for all 5 of our schools. And I'll speak to that in just a moment. I did provide the members all with a PowerPoint, kind of as a brief overview in conversation with the commissioner on Friday. I have a phone call, all the superintendents do, not obviously just me, but with the commissioner tomorrow. We're almost getting every other day updates as it relates to what's happening. And I do remain confident that the state guidance will provide a smooth transition for all students to in-school transit instruction. I do know that there's been some conversation and clearly they are looking for 3 models, but I understand that the commissioner has been very clear as the governor, their intent is to have all students return to school. But at the same token, they need to make sure that in fact, 1, all of the schools in the Commonwealth, our 5 schools in the district, can make those accommodations with the necessary safeguards. And 2, we want to be sure that in the event that things change over the coming months, that we have multiple models. I think there's been more anecdotal and conversation about the concern around the hybrid model. And I would ask everybody, including the members tonight, to keep communicating that the focus of the state in this district and my office is to see all of our students return to school. The hybrid model is being set up if in fact changes have to be made or if in fact we cannot accommodate all of our children. I had a leadership team meeting with all the principals and central office directors, and as we begin the feasibility studies and the COVID-19 essential teams at each school, we feel confident that we're going to be able to meet those challenges. So even though we will in fact have to submit by August 3 plans, 1, for all of our students to return, 2, some variation of a hybrid model where fewer students return to school, and then lastly, obviously a remote, understand that it is important that we stay focused on what the state wants us to do, which is to look at our specific schools, look at the benchmarks, look at the nursing area, for example, look at the classrooms, look at the 3-foot piece, and make sure that, in fact, we have the necessary space and the safeguards. Now, along with all these questions, and I'm going to just reference some of what the PowerPoint shared with you, transportation and food service guidance will be coming in the next week to 2 weeks. They were not really referenced in that initial guidance, and it was quite intentional. The commissioner and the state and the governor wants the focus right now on the schools to look at the initial guidance and make sure that, in fact, we can meet what other requirements to see as many of our students return to school safely for the fall. So you're going to be seeing transportation, busing guidance come out shortly. You're going to be seeing food service, although it was referenced in there as it relates to the use of the cafeteria. You're going to be seeing athletics and extracurricular. I'm getting some of the emails. I'm sure you're getting some of the communication task force members. Please understand, ask people to be patient. We're keeping these meetings open. I'll make sure that some of the presentations that I'm sharing with you, that was just a 10-slide document. very straightforward, really supporting all the medical documentation and the pediatricians' push to see our students return and the belief that they can return safely. That's going to be a real convincing piece in the communication. Several task force members said, can we do some town meetings and can we communicate to the public at large? Absolutely. Because as you know, there are families and there are staff members that are going to be apprehensive about sending their kids back to school. It is going to be our task in the next 8 weeks to diligently explain why, in fact, the best option for our kids is to get them back to our schools and how we're going to be able to do that safely. I'm very confident in that, even though I know that this 28, 30-page document didn't have all the answers that many of you were hoping for. This is a work in progress. For example, we're still waiting at the district level for the checklists and the templates to fill out relative to our space and size. I will tell you what the commissioner told the superintendents on Friday, though, not private information. If a school or a district cannot allow their students to come back, they're going to have to explain why that's the case. And the state, in fact, indicated that they'll probably come out to verify and visit as to why you can't, in fact, meet their goal, which is to see as many students, if not all students, return to school safely. We do have 3 subcommittee groups, and I know it seems like we're kind of treading here and you're waiting to get rolling, but you received the documentation as I received the documentation. For those school committee members and staff members that know me, actually, you got it the next morning. If you notice, we got it at about 11 o'clock at night. And if you know the Medeiros household, something that arrives after 11 o'clock doesn't really get in your hands till the next morning about 5:30. But you're getting the breaking news. And this is information we're going to share. I'll put the initial guidance. I sent it out in the superintendent's corner. It is absolute transparency here, folks. And so we want to be sure that we make the right decisions for our kids relative to transportation, relative to food service. At the end of the day, look at the team that we have. I'm going to ask a couple of leaders here to comment in just a moment. They don't know I'm doing this kind of off script, but Greg Goodwin, my director of facilities, and also my administrative representative, Mike Ward, the principal, if they could just speak to a couple things just to give you guys some insight. Greg, if you could just unmute yourself for a second, just speak to the fact that you've already kind of outlined some prototypical classrooms just to give principals a perspective of what they're looking at.
Yes, what we've done so far is we've taken 2 average-sized classrooms in each building in the district. We're setting one up with a 3-foot minimum social distancing, and we're setting one up with a 6-foot minimum social distancing, and taking the excess furniture out of the room so we can get a better idea of what the rooms look like.
So just that step, now when you dovetail that with educators and principals and teachers having the opportunity, we'll be able to see, looking at our class size, our enrollment, what steps and where at each of our 5 schools we may have problems as it relates to instruction and delivery of instruction. Craig also helped facilitate with the director of facilities PPE. We've already ordered significant hand sanitizer, for example, and Paula Mueller, who's also here, our lead nurse, and Joan have already begun the process of securing necessary materials 3 months out, by the way, as it relates to getting us prepared for the fall. Mr. Ward, if you could just jump in for a second and speak to, from a principal perspective, what we have ahead of us. Here we are on June 29th.
No, thank you, Mr. Medeiros, for this opportunity to speak. But certainly from a principal perspective, what we're thinking, you can see we had to come up with a COVID leader principal. We're doing that. We've already reached out. Each school has what we may coin as a health and safety team. That we're having these conversations, we're identifying teams, and then following up what Mr. Goodwin just said, we're obviously looking at prototype of rooms at 6 feet, at 3 feet. We're immediately starting off my conversation with my school nurse and following the guidelines in a separate area. So the thoughts are definitely having conversation. And the one piece that certainly, as Mr. Medeiros referenced, we were there today having a meeting, and certainly and with my own staff members, that we have the utmost confidence in the work that us. Yes, we're going to have to roll up our sleeves, but we are confident that the work that we're going to be able to put out is going to be all in the essence of safety for our students and our staff, so that way we can get back to face-to-face learning. And the work we're going to be able to do, we'll get that done in the next 8 weeks or so.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Ward. Just reference, just so community members here and staff members here, there is a potential that we may have to adjust the start of our school year a day or two just to accommodate some additional professional development. We have not made that determined. Ultimately, the school committee will look at that. Our current start is 2 days before Labor Day. That might be adjusted to address maybe 1 week of professional development the last week in August and all of our students starting the Tuesday after. So those types of tweaks will happen, and that will probably happen maybe as soon as a July 22nd school committee meeting, or maybe in August. We'll try to get as much information out. Remember, the final guidance from the state is coming out in late July as it relates. So we've got about 4 weeks ahead of that as we prepare the feasibility studies. That's the first and foremost thing that I think right now the state and the commissioner has shared with the superintendents, trying to be sure that in fact all of the schools, the 5 in our district, but throughout the Commonwealth, can make the necessary accommodations and safeguards as it relates to social distancing and space, class size, and can make those adjustments as necessary. We will deal with all the staffing and the parent requests as they come. And we're going to be doing some surveys as it relates to transportation and how comfortable people are. I think most of the questions, and I'll even ask Sherry Barron to jump in as a school committee member, right now are about this idea that everybody's thinking they're going back to work, and any sort of hybrid model where students are partially on and off, I think has people very anxious. Again, our driving motivation right now is to get all our students back on a consistent basis at all our sites, and we are not looking at that. We will provide a model that does that because we'll be required to, that 1 week off, 1 week on. But again, the premise is that would only be as a result of things not working out. Sherry, from a community perspective, and certainly school committee, if you don't mind, if I could put you on the spot just to comment on what you're hearing and kind of share your thoughts.
I think the community will be very happy to hear what you just said, Mr. Medeiros. Thank you. I'm getting multiple calls every week about how the hybrid's going to go, how we can keep kids safe enough. They seem the callers that I get seem very happy that we have a task force in place, that we're going to be working all through the summer on this. But the underlying signature of every one of these calls is, please get my kids back to school. My favorite is, Sherry, how are you going to get these kids back to school if it were only about me? Yes, that's what the families want that I have talked to. Not one has said not come back to school.
So I thank you, Sherry. So just so community members and certainly task force members understand, the Commissioner Riley and the governor are in a real tough spot, right? But understand their motivation is to get all these kids back into school safely. So this idea that, well, these 3 plans really kind of left it vague, we need to make sure that we dismiss that every opportunity, members. Our primary focus is to get all of our students back on site and do it safely. Now, determinations will be made, right? There will be families and potentially some students that are not comfortable with that. That's going to be our task. And just so this task force knows, if you walk out of here tonight going, wow, second meeting, understand that each of the schools, part of the initial guidance, and I'm sure you had ample time to read that, spoke to identify a COVID leader for each school. We've done that. Those are our building principals and assistant principals. And now submit COVID teams for each school so they can assess their buildings. Who knows those buildings better than those individuals? We were actually one step ahead. We had created the task force. If you notice, one of the first things they suggested was having some sort of district team. Well, we were a little bit ahead of that, right? We actually already had a meeting prior to that. And I'd like to think it's consistent with other direction we've made. We can't do things that are cost prohibitive, but at the same token, I feel very good about kind of where we're at with a monumental task, right? Let's not underestimate. There's a lot of work to be had between now and potentially September to get these kids back. But you just heard from a director of facilities. You just heard from one of the principals representing the leadership team, our school committee meeting group who's committed to seeing this through. We've established a couple more meetings this summer because we knew we were going to, we typically have not met in the summertime, but we recognized it was essential. And I am open, for, just so these members can hear, to any forum. And it may be a town meeting forum, it may be a remote forum that allows parents the opportunity to express some of the concerns. I do know that most of the concern appear to be around some sort of split. I'd like to have our nurse leader also speak to just to give kind of from a perspective, kind of what's happening in relation, and maybe share some concerns there. Paula?
Okay. One of the things that I just wanted to talk about, I know the goal is to get everybody back in school. And I think the key is going to be a lot of health education. And one of the things I think we can start right now, and I'm assuming, Rick, that you're going to keep your superintendent's newsletter going throughout the summer.
Yes.
I think one of the key things that we need to educate people on is, even about like wearing your masks now. Let's try to make our communities keep our numbers low, so that, because I know some of it was up to like locally where your numbers are at. Let's educate people about that. We need to educate them about when the kids go back to school and the teachers come back to school, a good education piece about, here's some symptoms. Do not come to work. Do not come to school with these symptoms. What we don't want is people medicating their kids and sending them into school, which, obviously has happened, unfortunately. But I think the education here is going to be so key. And then the other, I think that's a fairly big thing that we have to solve is the requirement, it said it in the guidelines, for an isolation area in each school, and how we're going to handle sick children coming to the nurse, whether it's going to be a phone call, because the sick children shouldn't be coming in the office where my, say, diabetic students are checking their blood sugar, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that's going to be a little bit of a hard thing.
Yeah, so in fact, we talked about that with leadership today with our principals and assistant principals, Paula, that the focus right now is looking at classroom space, but also that priority, because they did make it clear they do not want to see a health office divided. They feel it needs to be it should be a close proximity to the nurse's office. And that's going to be a task for each of our 5 schools to identify. Keep in mind, some districts don't even have nurses at all their schools. And that was a priority that superintendents talked about, having the need to have a health professional. We clearly have that, and we'll need that, but we'll have to take a look at facility-wise, structure-wise, but also supervision, and I couldn't agree more. Education is going to be the key. This is going to be a I think Paul George sent me something, I don't know if you're there, Paul, but Dr. George basically talked about this is going to be a communication task for us, right? The fact that we make sure that we communicate education and what it is we're doing and what it is we need to do in order to be sure that parents are comfortable either transporting their children or having them, transported on the buses as we get that information, and then keeping them in school safely. Again, it's a situation, if you look at the membership of this task force, we've got it covered. So I know Jose and Sean are kind of facilitating this. Are there members relative to parents and community that would like to speak at this time? I've tried to capture some of that. Understand as the checklists and the schools teams start doing their work, it's going to require that the task force be engaged and involved in that, right? We have teachers and educators and parents. So although it seems like we're not quite there yet, keep in mind, you just got the initial guidance on Thursday. We've had a couple of days to look at that. And there's going to be information rolling out almost on a daily basis from the state that's going to help drive it. Derek, did I see you want to comment at this point?
Yeah. Well, first, it's a little disappointing that the state has no recommendation for the event that there's a positive case at the moment. They said that was coming. That's disappointing. But Rick, in reading the regulations, there actually is a hybrid model, and that needs to be followed. And we can't ignore the fact that there's going to be people that elect to keep their children home for whatever reason. And the state has said, hey, in that event, there has to be a hybrid model. That scares me, because I have no idea what the heck that's going to look like. And as Ms. Barron mentioned, that's the big anxiety amongst the folks out there. But in fact, that's a reality, because all it needs is one student to stay home, and we have to provide, according to the guidelines, a remote learning environment. How is that? What is that going to even look like?
So Derek, and I think that's the most common question in conversation, right? So let's play this through. If we're gonna have all 2,800 students come back to school, but we're gonna have a percentage of students that one maybe aren't healthy enough to come back to school or make the choice. That's one scenario. The idea of a hybrid, though, that we structure it, that half of our students don't go into school, is really what the hybrid model looks like. What you're speaking to is another complicated factor that has to be considered, which are those individuals who choose not to go to school, and how do we continue to have them teach? And in fact, in some instances, if staff maybe fit a category where they're not comfortable, we're going to have to build in remote learning components with ongoing instruction in the schools at the same time. So Derek, that is not Rick Medeiros giving you a wishy-washy answer. It's the truth about what the hybrid is going to look like in Freetown, in Lakeville, and then maybe look differently in Middleborough and Bridgewater. It's going to really be based on need. It's going to be based on staffing. And so those things are going to have to be in detail. And to your point, you're right. The state did say, listen, you're going to give us 3 plans. They didn't say you can choose one and the one you like the best we're going to go with. Their focus is on getting all kids back, but we in fact need to have a plan. For example, if in fact they determine that a smaller number of students and we need more spacing within the schools. What I would tell you is, though, the document I sent the members today, that 10-page slide that kind of broke down the initial guidance, spoke to the medical field, the health professionals not seeing a need to reduce the number of students within our schools. And those are the health professionals speaking. A lot of that document came from the pediatricians. In fact, the head pediatrician spoke to the superintendents on Friday as a follow-up and said, one of the tasks, and I can think of Joan and Paula thinking of this, that we need to get all pediatricians to support the position of the school getting kids back, because that's who people are going to speak to, right? They're going to trust and feel comfortable speaking to their own pediatricians about what's safe and whether we should do that. There will be instances, Derek, where students are going to have to, and I think the most challenging of the 3 models, it won't be us getting all our kids back. I am confident that we can, within 3-foot spacing and address some of the concerns with safeguards, get our kids back. And obviously, I think we've done and learned a lot about our full-blown remote learning as we pick up more devices. It's that middle ground. It's that gray area that has a lot of people concerned, and we're going to have to iron that out in the coming weeks as we get ready to submit a plan in August. Again, not ducking the question, but something that our primary focus right now is to make sure that we can identify that we can see our students return safely. I see Paula. I don't know if anybody else in relation, and even through the chat, Jose or Sean, I don't know if there's others. I certainly will have Paula speak. I just don't want to take away from any other members. Paula, go ahead.
I just have a question,
Sure.
and this is more for Mike Ward and for the other, for Assawamsett Elementary School. I believe they said everyone in 2nd grade up had to wear masks, and that you could use spacing of 3 feet if you were mask wearing. That's how I read the regulations. So if the kids in the lower grades, K through 1, don't wear masks, do they then need 6-foot spacing?
Mike? And I can speak to the medical pieces. That clearly that there still needs to be the social distancing, and it's 3 feet. But there are not the same restrictions relative to mask wearing for the younger children. Mike, I don't know if you want to speak to just the age of the kids and something that's going to have to obviously be worked out with your nurses and your principals, with your teachers.
No, yeah, I apologize. I was just struggling to get myself unmuted. But with that, as Mr. Medeiros just said, it's going to have to be a continuous conversation. And again, getting into the rooms and being able to look at something, and it sounds strange, but this is the truth of excess furniture in the room, because that can make a difference, like an extra table and then the furniture that's in the room. And we have to make sure that we're looking at, I mean, truly 6 feet if they're on mask, 3 feet and whatnot. So we have to take a look at those type of things. And again, that's all going to be done in that conversation that we're going to be with the different teams. But that's going to come through, and we'll share that out with families as we go forward with the question and answering piece.
But Sherry Sherry Barron sent me a quick note while we were having this, just for clarification. So the initial requirements are based on their guidance, by the way, and I think it's important that we note that, right? They're giving us some general guidance about some things, and they're not necessarily required. Again, I think it's going to have to be something we take a look at as we look at those younger kids, and something that Mike, not only Mike Ward, but obviously all the principals, Paul, you referenced Assawamsett, and certainly and she referenced those two schools. For those, I think everybody here knows that, because those are our two, K-3, pre-K to 3 schools, and where we're going to see those students and that population. But I'm confident that we have the necessary people to kind of answer that question, and that gets ironed out. I haven't seen any, again, I'm looking at the chat, haven't seen any questions posted in the chat. And so if there are other members that either have questions or statements, I tried to hit up on the big topics for today, which was people were going to say that the initial guidance was not specific enough, and what's happening. Well, what's happening right now is the building-based teams are being put together by the principals and are beginning to look at the space requirements and the safeguards. We're looking at things such as making signage at each of the schools in relation to social distancing. And Paula Mueller referenced the fact that education is going to be critical, right? Communication and education about what it is that we're asking folks to do moving forward. Other questions or comments? Again, I'd like to say all of our meetings are going to be a half hour to 45 minutes to an hour. I would enjoy every second of these initial meetings that don't go that long right now, because as I said to my leadership team today, and I didn't say it in I tried to be a little humorous with it. We kind of joked and said, what happened to summer, right? Because I said, I asked them to, if they knew an administrator that knew what summer was like the last time we tried to reopen a school through a pandemic, I guess we'd have to go back to 1918 to kind of figure that out. I don't have any, I'm old, but even I don't even have those friends to help me out relative to that. So we are in uncharted territory. I feel, and you should feel, and the Commonwealth should feel real good, though, that the commissioner and the governor and those folks are very much committed to seeing our kids return. I think we all are in agreement. We need our kids to come back to school on site in a safe learning environment, and make sure our staff and everybody feel comfortable about that. I do see that it looks like maybe Mary and Ann do have questions. So Ann, do you want to jump in? Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. I got a very brief email from our building principal today. When you talk about the building-based teams, are those not going to be meeting until the fall, or will they be meeting prior to that? Because it was kind of one of those, let me know.
Yeah, so I can tell you those teams are going to be meeting now, Ann. So
okay.
So there will be teams, obviously, and I know we have safety committees and health groups that meet throughout the course of the year. The teams that the principals are pulling together now are going to go through the checklist that the state will provide for our August plan to make a determination. For example, for those of you that don't know, Ann is not only a parent, but a teacher at the intermediate school, whether the intermediate school can accommodate all the 4th and 5th grades. So that those teams that are being assembled will be doing work now, this summer.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
Great question. Mary, did you have a comment from a parent perspective?
So I have one comment or one question. I'm not sure which way to handle it, but if a child were to be positive for COVID and have to go home, they're going to be missing 2 full weeks of education. Are we going to be offering remote learning on that kind of a basis, like where they can just jump in and do the work remotely and be a part maybe of the classrooms or something?
So that was the question that Derek Grasha asked me, and Derek probably was shaking his head. He was just being polite, saying he didn't really answer that. That's that question that if we have the vast majority of our kids or a percentage of our kids return to school, there's going to be a percentage that are not in school. And how do we address those needs? So Mary, to answer your question, I think there's got to be a remote component built in, and we're going to be providing devices 6 to 12 for all our students. And then we'll obviously make some connections for those elementary. But we would do that regardless. So if we had a student, for those educators that are here and nurses know that, anytime we've had a student out for multiple days, we've always provided work as it relates. The question's going to be, and that hybrid model is really what makes it challenging, is are we talking about streaming, lesson? Is it live, or will there be some follow-up, and how will those kids stay connected that are not in school? Good question, Mary. I think there's clearly, we will need to follow the health and medical field, right? I mean, if a student, in fact, is identified and sent home, then obviously there won't be any options there. That's simply a health medical decision. And the question will be, what education can we provide for those kids in the interim? I think we've learned so much in the last 3 months about remote learning. I'm excited about the commitment that the school committee has made. Just so, in fact, if committee members and community members don't know, we're committed to providing all of our students in 6 to 12 at the middle school and high school with devices this year. So every one of our students, 6 to 12, the plan right now is to roll out devices for each of those kids. At the elementary level, we'll do it on a need-be basis. Obviously, so much of the decision was that our middle school and high school kids are a little bit more responsible in relation to being able to do the work on their own. So much of the elementary work has to be helped out by parents. So Mary, I think you make a great question and point. We've got to be sure that we have something in place for that child who's not in school, if we're all. Other quick comments or suggestions at this point. I skipped a week. I'm initially looking at having our next meeting about 2 weeks out. I am chomping at the bit to have a site meeting, folks, and yet I'm also trying to be sensitive to obviously making sure it's a safe situation and also accommodates all of your schedules. But I do think at some point, in a very safe manner and a socially distanced, masked manner, it would be helpful for some people to get into schools and kind of see what it is we're talking about and see firsthand. So right now, I think our meeting will potentially look like a remote 6:30 meeting. But if there's ways, and we are in our building teams have put together what I think would be helpful, we might be able to coordinate and have a meeting in a larger area and then break up into subgroups. I've actually done some initial assigning of each of the members to one of the 3 subcommittees. Keep in mind, so this is my little homework assignment for my members. We have facilities and an environment. Greg Goodwin's facilitating that. We have teaching and learning, Mike Ward, the principal, and we have health in general, whether it be physical, social, emotional, kind of facilitated by Paula Mueller. Of the 24 members, I've kind of made a predetermined list of where I think where either your strengths are or where I think you're representing the community well. And what I'd ask you to do is just send me an individual email with that, and then I'll kind of roll out and see if what I've set up initially is consistent with where you'd want to be. So obviously, some food service, for example, in transportation, I kind of put in facilities in the environment. Some of the classroom teachers, I've tried to capture them in teaching and learning. And then so some of the parents, depending upon your expertise and or grade level, I've tried to balance that a little bit about where I have Joan Bullock, for example, with Paula. And then we certainly have some very strong health professionals there too as well. These meetings, I will continue to keep them open, by the way. I think it's real important that people, because we had so many letters of interest, that we allow anybody to come in to participate and or be part of the process. It does become a little cumbersome though, and I will tell you that the next week to 10 days, it's going to be those building teams that Ann asked about that are going to be generating the work and the benchmarks, and hopefully I'll be able to have documents to share. I actually already have the teams. I'll share that with the members so you can see what each school has as a representation from that initial guidance. And then from there, as we start to fill out some of those documents that are going to be provided by the state in the coming days. So as much as I've been complimentary about the state, I understand your frustration, because keep in mind, as superintendent, we're waiting for documents that are just being created so we can, in fact, turn around our plans.
again, real challenging situation. But I'm encouraged by the fact that we have a path and a plan in place. We were chomping at the bit for the initial. I think a lot of you were hoping for more detail. I think you're going to see that coming as it relates to transportation, food service, and then the final guidance. I think they're being very careful to roll this out not too soon and then have to backtrack from that. So it is going to be an interesting summer, I guess, is the best way to word it. I thought these first couple of meetings would just kind of be overview, and that's what they've intended to be. I was going to walk you through the slides on the screen, but I don't know about any of you. If you've ever been to any professional development, and I'm one of those individuals that I always hate when people read me the slides. I can look at the slides myself. So I think it's more important I do it for the community, though. So I'll share that PowerPoint with the other community members and parents and families. Paula made a great point, the superintendent's corner. And if you have other vehicles by which to communicate as task force members, whether it be through social media, again, representing the task force, I think it's important that you share with parents that are concerned about their kids returning that the district will in fact put a plan in place that's safe, and then there will be some obviously some decisions relative to what do we do with those families and kids that are not prepared to go back. I'd like to think that number is small, but we'll have to survey, in fact, to see, in fact, for example, parents are comfortable sending their children on buses once we see what that transportation looks like, and at the same token, where they want to be. I can tell you our class size numbers and our space. We are in a better situation than a lot of school districts when you look at our facilities relative to the use of space. I will say this, though, for those educators that are sitting here and everybody else listening, I told my principals we're going to have to be creative, though, right? There may be some classroom space that are using science lab tables that we have to teach in a different environment, in a different area. We have to take a look at shared areas, right? How are we going to teach all our students, for example, art at the elementary level? That was a question raised today in relation, do we have all those kids and can we properly clean? But if you look at the initial guidance, they speak to that. And in a lot of instances, they're talking about kids not sharing the same brushes and things like that, and having products there, and or having staff members come to the kids and try to limit the time. It looks like we got a couple more questions. Derek, do you want I'll bounce it back to you.
Yeah, Rick, just one thing. If we're going to communicate that this is a safe environment, yet we're going to continue to have remote meetings, I think that's kind of sending the wrong message. Believe me, I like having the meetings in the confines of my own home, but I'm not sure we're going to be sending the right message by saying, hey, you all can go back to school, but we're still going to have remote meetings.
Derek, listen, you're from this superintendent, I can tell you this meeting would have, I'm in, I don't know if you can tell this beautiful background that I'm in here. This is my office. I couldn't agree more. I am very comfortable with safely using social distance and masks, having these members return in an environment. Listen, we had town meeting at the high school just recently in Lakeville. So, but I couldn't agree more with you. And I can tell you the school committee agrees because they've already moved towards the next school committee meeting, July 22nd, being at the high school in the library. So that is our intent. But so if I'm not asking Derek to speak for consensus. Am I getting a sense that if we can do this safely, members would like to see our next meeting in a couple of weeks at a location to be determined that's at one of our schools?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Thanks. Again, you can give me individual feedback along the way, and I'll make that determination. I'm not putting everybody on the spot right now. Ann, did you have a question as it relates to that as well? Ann Davis?
I just wanted to kind of speak back to what, Mary's question in the community, just from a teacher's, perspective, when you talk about, if a child does have to be out for a 2-week quarantine. And I know right now we don't have a hybrid, plan in place, but, and I can't speak for secondary, middle school and high school. I can only really speak to the elementary schools. But as teachers, we send home the work that we can, the work that they need direct instruction for. We do find the time during the day to sit with those students who were out for extended periods of time, to work with them and, to get them kind of back up to par with the rest of the class. So just from an educator's point of view and a parent's point of view, obviously, you know, I have no doubt that if a student has to be out for 2 weeks, you know, for quarantining or whatever, that they will fall completely far behind. You know, like I said, like we do the best we can to catch them up. And I think we're going to really have to think about the use of paraprofessionals and how we utilize them, you know, during this whole process too.
I agree. And just so the group hears, we had some conversations, and we were multiple teachers that are present. It's going to be real helpful on these teams, because we're going to be asking all of our talented staff maybe to play slightly different roles relative to specialists and paraprofessionals as it relates to what makes the most sense for this year, right? Or for these next 3 months as this process kind of rolls out. I think the great piece, at least from my experience, my 6th year here in the district, we have a great working relationship with the multiple associations and the teachers and educators and the custodians and all of those individuals. It's going to be, we're going to need that and then some to make this all work in as best we can. But I'm confident that we can do it. I really do. It looks like we have a question from Robert. Robert, you're on.
He needs to unmute.
Unmute. There you go. Can you hear me? Hello?
There we go.
Hey, so I just wanted to say, along the lines of holding meetings, you know, so I've worked at Morton Hospital as a hospitalist through this whole thing, and we are definitely past worried about that. I mean, if we sit spread out with masks on, I mean, I think we're extremely within the window of being able to do that safely. And I would send that message strongly. We've been doing that for a long time, even when this was much more dangerous, and it's been safe.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's, I think, Robert, thank you, by the way. I couldn't agree more. I think, you know, obviously, we're not, there folks, there will be no shortcuts to the safeguards that we need to put in place, right? The social distancing, the masks, and spacing. We'll do all those things. But we absolutely can send the message, and we need to continue to encourage our sites being ready for these kids and for the adults to be there. So it's my intent, if I hear everybody loud and clear, supported by, you know, some comments here, that we can have our next session in a couple of weeks and just identify what's the best location to do that, and also have a location where we can invite others, you know, socially distanced in the spot. So I do appreciate that info. It looks like we're about 45 minutes into 50. I don't mind staying on board and answering specific questions. I guess I'd simply ask task force members, you will get some subcommittee assignments. You will be notified what the building level teams are made up of and what they're doing. And then we'll coordinate our next meeting. And don't be surprised, and I'd like to tell you it's going to be every other day or every third day, but I will be communicating with you as we receive more information from the state. I'm on the phone tomorrow afternoon at 3:30 with the commissioner. All the superintendents are, with an update, and a lot of it's going to be about some more specific guidance. And I know the Ken Resendes and Andrea Fays of the world are waiting for food service and cafeteria and transportation items. They're coming. The sports and athletics, the extracurricular, that guidance is coming. But we're going to start with trying to get our kids back. So it is my intent to have our next meeting. It will be a night meeting. It will be 6:30, and just coordinating what's the best location as it relates. We'll probably keep it here on the campus and just pick an area that makes the most sense. With 25 members, obviously we want to make sure we keep the social distancing, whether it be a cafeteria, whether it be our lecture hall. I want to also be able to accommodate members of the public who might come as well, and make sure that we can address that. You know, at the same token, I don't want it to be so large that, you know, we're out in the football field to have that meeting. I don't think that's necessary. I think we can begin returning to our schools and do that with the numbers that we'll see. You'll also maybe we might be able to break down a little bit and see what a classroom looks like. I think it would be helpful. We're getting some pictures. Mr. Goodwin has already indicated to me that he'll have some of those prototypes. And so before you actually get to the school, I'll even hopefully maybe be able to forward those to the committee members, the task force members, so you can begin seeing, in fact, what a classroom looks like as it relates. Greg said it was pretty telling, right, Greg, relative to the 3 feet space and the number of desks and things. It's the desk, the table, all those things that got to get worked out. And then obviously, I can tell you my principals roll up their sleeves off to work today after we had our session. So, Greg, I don't know if you want to comment on that piece, but I think we'll be able to share those with some photos that can at least capture as best you can so that some of the parents and the community members can see.
Absolutely. It definitely shows you what you have for space in the classroom, and there's no room for any of the extras that are usually in them. Those big round tables, the half moon tables, stuff of that nature, they take up space. And like I said, you'll get an idea once you get an eye full of what's happening.
Yeah, we had a colorful conversation. For those of you that have ever had to do any moving or been in a home like I have for a long time, you come to realize, in fact, what are the essentials within a classroom and what is the essentials in a room. And I think that we're going to be taking a real close look at that, especially for those individuals who've been in the classroom for some time and had a certain way by which they taught. We're going to have to take a look and see. Keep in mind that initial guidance talked about students being 3 feet apart, facing the same direction, right? Not sharing tables and making sure that they're spread out. I walked through the high school today and looked at some classrooms that I don't see an issue with that at all. And at the elementary level, we're going to have to make some modifications relative to kids sitting on rugs and so forth, and the spacing that we'll have to work that through. But the luxury that we have, and I underline luxury, that a lot of districts don't have, is we do have the facilities and space to accommodate most of what we're going to need to do. We're just going to have to be very creative and flexible as it relates to some things that we've done in the past. But good question. Sherry's asking me a question as I kind of look down. I don't have, the meetings have been on Monday. Is there a preference? Do we want to move those around? I can accommodate that. I did push the earliest start back to what I think I hope to accommodate people by having a later meeting. I'm open to any time frame as it relates to the day. Let me take that back in front of my school committee. I'm not so sure we want to be sitting here on Friday night or Saturday night to do that, but Monday through Thursday, I would be open to moving that around if people felt that Monday might free up something that Sherry, you want to comment on that?
I really am just asking that so that we can keep a particular night of the week open, so that they would all be on the same night, or if you're going to bounce them around a little.
At this point, I would say yes. We've kept them. Unless there's a real conflict that happens, why don't we kind of do that out, and you can kind of anticipate that every 2 weeks that we'd have a Monday meeting leading in. We'll have one on the 13th. The following week, there'd be a school committee meeting, so there'd be another public opportunity, and then we'd probably have a follow-up on the 27th, and by that, you folks will have seen probably some drafts of what the initial plans that are going to be submitted to the state will look like. That's how quickly this is going to happen and need to happen if we're going to be sure that we can convince our community that we're ready to open. And I see September or the start of school as 2 months away and very manageable as it relates to where we need to be. I am excited. When I saw some of the parades and some of those kids waving, the only thing they wanted to hear from me as I was standing out in the parking lot, the 4th and 5th graders, were "see you in the fall." Those are the comments, right? I think that people truly felt that, both kids and parents and families, they said, have a great summer, but we look forward to seeing you in the fall. That's our task, and that is the task of this group. I'm very appreciative of the time and effort. I think it's gonna pile up a little more, though, than what I've asked you to do to date. I'm going to ask you to review that, email me, text me. I'll put those subcommittees together, the building level teams, as they start submitting those checklists, I'll forward those to you. We'll try to get some photos to you. Some of the nurses that are on board here and the health professionals, you want to start examining and looking at what those classrooms would look like and what those pull-out areas would be potentially. And I already know many of them have ideas of what that would look like. We cannot count on additional funding, obviously, right from the state and federal money, even though there is significant funding to do this. We have to be sure that we can try to do as best we can. And I can tell you the district has been fiscally responsible in 20 and leading to 21. We're in a lot better shape than a lot of regional school districts. Out of the almost 100 regional school districts, we were one, I think, of only 10 that have already had their budget approved rolling into this year. So and we're going to need every bit of that as we roll into 21. I don't see any Any other? Oh, I get a request here, maybe potentially looking at a Tuesday or Thursday to avoid anyone having a long weekend. I told my leadership team they're not entitled to long weekends, so I don't know what that means, but I just think for consistency, and obviously if you can't make a meeting, we can kind of do that. I'll certainly be open to that. But at this point, I do think we need to kind of give you guys a time frame. Let's try to keep our next meeting on the 13th. And on that Monday, the 13th, and at 6:30, and I'll just identify the location, and we'll kind of go from there. I truly just want to make this opportunity before we wrap up in 50 minutes here, less than an hour, thanking LakeCAM, Jose and Sean, who kind of jumped in towards the tail end. They facilitate the meetings for the town and the town meetings, and they've offered to do that for school committee meetings and the district moving forward. And I think I'm going to be taking them. They jumped in at the very tail end of today's meeting just to help facilitate the host aspect of it and put some screens up and make it professional and give you guys names and titles. And I just want to acknowledge and thank them for that opportunity. I think we can continue to make this communication even more efficient and effective moving forward.
Thank you.
Do you have any comments in relation to that?
You folks did great. Sorry, I was a little heavy-handed on the chat.
Thank you. Thank you for kind of handling that task and really, again, members, communicate relative to what's happening. Share the guidance. That's why the guidance is there. I'll try to give highlights in the superintendent's corner. Paula, Joan, keep sharing the health numbers, and my educational leaders and parents. We will get this done. We're going to do this, and I'm excited about this opportunity. And I'm looking forward to the fall and our kids coming back in mass to a safe environment at all of our schools. So have a good evening, folks. Thank you so much, and we'll stay in touch. Take care. Stay safe.